What you're watching here is Miami Heat assistant coach Caron Butler stepping in with Michael Gardner and making him apologize to Klay Thompson after Gardner called Klay trash during a game against the Dallas Mavericks last year. But here's the part that makes the whole situation even more interesting. Just a few months later, Klay Thompson would end up becoming
some shooting. Yeah, they got one of the Splash Brothers coming down there. He gonna feel real good down there. You know, he like to drive boats and shit, man. Shout out to Klay Thompson, man, going to Miami Heat, man. Miami, very different team. Very different team, man. I seen Klay this summer. He been cooking, he been shooting it well. Okay, Klay, I like this move. I love it.
So, say it ain't so. My right-hand man, Klay Thompson, going to Miami. Just what the Heat needed, bro. That's gonna take them to a different level. Klay Thompson got a lot left in the tank. Pat Riley done did it again.
Okay.
So the Miami Heat are absolutely thrilled they were able to get Klay Thompson in this buyout agreement. Getting shooting was a huge priority for them, the way their roster got hollowed out in the Giannis Antetokounmpo trade. But if you look at what they have now, they really have a formidable shooting team because Andrew Wiggins had his best three-point shooting season last year, and you certainly expect that to continue. He's in a contract year. You think he's going to have a good year. They obviously signed Tim Hardaway, who they got on a good contract. Hardaway is a guy who's, if healthy, will hit 200-plus three-pointers for the Heat. And now they get Klay Thompson, one of the greatest three-point shooters of all time. Now, look, he did not play that well for the Mavericks last year. But the role that he's going to be expected to play, which is stand over there, get open, get the three-point shot and release it, I think it's as good of an addition as that the Heat could have made. They were waiting the Mavericks out, and the Mavericks didn't really want to trade Klay because he was an expiring contract that they could have used later. But they needed to get rid of a player. They had 16 players on their roster, and Klay was willing to take a little bit less money, and so this worked out. So, Klay's in a spot where contributing at this level can really help him. And I don't think this is like changing the balance of power. I'm not even sure how big of a role Klay will have, but obviously the Heat were waiting for this. They were waiting to see if they could make this addition. They still have a couple of roster spots open. They can still make some more, but a very significant move and a pivot for the Mavericks, because the Mavericks know that they need to move a little bit younger, build around obviously Cooper Flag and their other young pieces. So the tenure for Klay in Dallas is a little disappointing, but he might have one.
There has been a lot of discussion about whether the Miami Heat have enough shooting around Giannis, so I want to take a closer look at the players they have surrounded him with. If you remember what Miami accomplished during the Jimmy Butler years, a lot of those teams were built around players who were not necessarily household names. Now they have Giannis, a proven superstar who has already shown he can lead a team all the way to the top, and they have surrounded that dominance with shooting and Bam Adebayo. There is a lot to like here. Look at the numbers. You have 38%, 38%, and 40% from Davion Mitchell. That is a player many people probably would not have immediately associated with being a reliable shooter. If you only remember Mitchell from his early days in Sacramento, you may not have noticed how much his perimeter game has developed over the years. Andrew Wiggins is another example. He entered the league primarily known as a slasher, but by the time he was playing with Golden State, he had developed into a very capable shooter. And honestly, I would even argue that he outplayed Jason Tatum in those NBA Finals a few years ago. Was that 2022? I believe it was. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been a quality shooter throughout his career. Bobby Portis Jr., or Bobby Portis to be exact, also shot the ball extremely well last year. So when you put all of that together, I think Miami has quietly assembled a roster that makes a lot of sense. And that is what Miami does. They are not always getting the same amount of attention or off-season hype as some of the other teams, but they have once again built a competitive roster. If you are a team like Detroit or another team sitting right around that contender line, you have to be looking at Miami and wondering whether they quietly jumped ahead of you in one offseason. And if you are the Knicks or a team like Philadelphia, you absolutely have to pay attention to what Miami has done with Giannis. They went out and acquired arguably the most dominant player in the game on a nightly basis. Sometimes Wemby can settle for jumpers, and we just saw him taking threes in that FIBA game. I am talking about something completely different with Giannis. This is a guy who uses his size and physicality to overwhelm people all over the court. And Giannis may not have played on many teams built around the kind of ball movement and culture Miami emphasizes. That could actually create easier opportunities for him. If he stops trying to bring the ball up the floor on every possession and putting himself in situations where he can rack up 5 or 6 turnovers and instead allows his skill set to blend into Miami's system, this could become a very dangerous team. Let Giannis run the floor. Let him grab the rebound, get the ball to a guard, and then sprint the lane instead of always trying to dribble through everybody and finish with a Euro step. If he plays that way, I think this team is going to be extremely difficult to deal with. And honestly, when you look at what Miami accomplished with Butler, I think they have every right to put themselves into the conversation for coming out of the East. A lot of people are looking at Washington, but right now, I cannot put Washington ahead of Miami. I just can't. Miami has too much playoff experience from important players, and now they have Giannis leading the way alongside Bam. Giannis and Bam could potentially become the best frontcourt combination in the league. I like AD, Sayar, and those guys too, and I think there will be some fascinating matchups there. They also have Trae Young. But when I look at Miami, I see Giannis, a proven NBA champion, and Bam, a player who has already been to 2 NBA Finals. That combination is something serious. I am honestly really impressed with what Miami did this offseason. So if I'm ranking the East right now, obviously New York is still there, Philadelphia is there, and then you have Miami. The truth is, I'm not even sure whether I would put the Heat or Philly ahead of each other at this exact moment. If you simply look at the names, Jaylen Brown, LeBron, Embiid, Maxey, and all that talent, you would probably lean toward Philadelphia. But basketball is still a team sport, and Miami has a long history of getting more out of its roster than people expect. If they can overachieve the way they did during those Jimmy Butler years, but now have Giannis providing that level of dominance, I am not putting a ceiling on this team yet. Miami has knocked out teams before that people never expected them to beat, and I would not be surprised if they did it again. And I cannot leave out the Indiana Pacers. Maybe they come back and make another run as well, but the Eastern Conference is going to look very different now. LeBron is in the East, Giannis is in Miami. That alone changes the entire landscape. Then you have Jalen Brunson in the New York Knicks, plus Mike Brown, a coach who makes adjustments and has shown that he is willing to use his bench and play through Cat, something we saw during the postseason. So Indiana is going to have an interesting challenge as well. But that is my quick look at the Miami Heat. Let me know what you guys think. Do you believe Miami has quietly positioned itself as one of the biggest threats in the East? Drop